Kevin was 34 years old, and for most of his life, he had worn the invisible label, the outsider. Not the black sheep, not quite the failure, but always the one quietly mocked at family gatherings. It didn't matter how many holidays he paid for, how many chairs he carried from the garage, or how many times he volunteered to help clean up. The role had already been written for him, and no one seemed interested in changing the script. His brother Ethan was the golden boy, the one with the reliable job, the shiny car, and the polished LinkedIn page. His sister Dorothy was the glowing mom, always ready with baby photos and funny toddler stories. Kevin? He was the one they called different, the one who never quite followed the rules. The weird one, they'd say with a chuckle, as though the nickname itself was endearing rather than humiliating. Every Thanksgiving, every birthday party, every carefully planned dinner turned into a stage for casual cruelty. The insults were never loud. No one shouted. Instead, they came with fake smiles, raised wine glasses, and laughter that cut sharper than any argument. "You always embarrass us," his dad would say, nudging Ethan like Kevin was some kind of private inside joke only they understood. His mom wouldn't stop it. She'd just sigh and murmur, "Just try not to say anything strange this time, okay?" And Kevin? He'd smile politely, nod, and head out to get folding chairs or light the fire pit. He became the background character in his own life, someone people expected to show up, stay quiet, and stay useful. It didn't matter that he had been financially supporting those holidays for years. It didn't matter that he was generous, dependable, and kind. What mattered was that he didn't fit their mold. Kevin had spent his 20s bouncing between freelance gigs, tech side projects, and small business experiments. Nothing he did ever seemed to impress his family. He wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't a doctor. He didn't have a neat office job with a business card. And so, they dismissed everything he tried. When he helped design websites for local stores, they called it a hobby. When he advised early-stage startups, they rolled their eyes and asked when he'd get serious. Even when his software business began growing during COVID, they couldn't see past their assumptions. He remembered one Thanksgiving dinner vividly. His dad was carving the turkey like he was on a cooking show. Ethan leaned across the table and smirked. "So, Kev, I hear you're hiring someone? Like, what, a buddy to help fix your website?" Laughter followed, polite and sharp. Kevin didn't reply. It wasn't worth it. It never was. No matter how far he had come. To them, he was still the helper. The odd one, the family's favorite disappointment. But Kevin had been doing something they didn't see. He was saving, quietly, relentlessly. He had been working late, cutting costs, investing smartly, and growing a business that no one in the family bothered to ask about. He didn't talk about it anymore, not because he was ashamed, but because he was done explaining himself to people who had already made up their minds. The final straw came at Dorothy's 37th birthday party. His mom had gone all out, booking a vineyard and hiring a live guitarist. There were photos projected on a screen. Dorothy in diapers. Dorothy at graduation. Dorothy showing off her first tax return. Kevin stood in the back of the crowd with a glass of wine in hand, trying to stay unnoticed. Then Ethan raised a toast. "To Dorothy," he said, "proof that being responsible works." The crowd roared with approval. Kevin smiled tightly. Then came the next blow. "And cheers to Kevin," his mom added, for always keeping us wondering. More laughter. His hands trembled around the stem of his wine glass. He stayed afterward to help the catering team pack up, not because he owed anyone, but because the staff looked tired. And he knew what it felt like to be invisible. As he loaded folding chairs into the van, Ethan walked by and muttered just loud enough to hear, "Still the helper, huh?" No one else heard. No one ever did. Kevin didn't answer. He finished the job, drove home, and sat in silence. But this silence wasn't defeat. It was clarity. He wasn't angry anymore. He was ready. For years, Kevin had been building something real, something stable, something his family never cared to see. And now, it was time to step into it fully. No more hiding, no more waiting for approval that was never going to come. That spring, he bought a home, not just any home, a modern masterpiece tucked away in a gated neighborhood on a hill. With glass walls, a tech-integrated kitchen, and a backyard with panoramic views. He didn't tell anyone in his family. Not because he was trying to be secretive, but because they had stopped asking. They didn't know what he did for work. They didn't care what his days looked like. They had their version of him. And nothing he said would ever change it. When he signed the papers, he stood alone on the balcony with a glass of sparkling water and breathed deeply. For the first time in years, the air felt light. He threw a housewarming party. String lights draped above the patio. There were music and laughter and people who had supported him from the beginning, clients, old friends, mentors. He didn't invite a single family member. Not out of spite, but because it wasn't their celebration. This was for him. The photos from the night made it online. Someone posted a picture of Kevin on the balcony, arms spread wide against the city lights, with the caption, "From outcast to empire builder. So proud of you, Kevin." The reaction was instant. Comments poured in, congratulatory texts, shocked messages from old classmates, praise from coworkers, and eventually, silence from his family. Until it wasn't silent anymore. Because when his mom saw that picture, when Ethan noticed the tags, when Dorothy realized she wasn't included, that's when the real noise began. But Kevin was ready for it. Kevin didn't reply to the calls, the comments, or the guilt-laced messages from his family. Not because he wanted to hurt anyone, and certainly not to get even, but because, for the first time in his life, he had found peace. Peace that he had earned. After years of being sidelined, of trying to explain himself to people who never listened. He had stepped away from their noise. No more seeking validation. No more performing for their acceptance. The house wasn't just a house. It was proof. It was victory. It was sunlight streaming through two-story windows. High vaulted ceilings that made the air feel wider. And floors so smooth you could hear your own footsteps, finally. His footsteps, in a place he owned. It was silence. Not empty and cold, but warm and chosen. Silence where no one was mocking him. Silence that felt like freedom. Every inch of the house told a story. The living room with built-in speakers? Paid for by a software client who said Kevin's advice saved his business. The smart kitchen? Funded by app licensing fees Kevin had quietly negotiated over 2 years ago. The upstairs office with its massive whiteboard, wall-mounted screens, and ergonomic chair? That was built after Kevin secured his first retainer contract with a national retail chain during lockdown. They all thought he was just helping friends with websites. They had no idea he was building a system that scaled. He didn't rush to post about his success. In fact, if his friend Stephanie hadn't tagged him in that photo, the one with him on the balcony, arms raised with city lights behind him, none of it might have made its way online. But once it did, the internet lit up. Friends, colleagues, even former clients shared kind words. So proud of you. You deserve every bit of this. From the garage to greatness. But buried among those genuine celebrations were the guilt trip messages from family. Why weren't we invited? This hurts. We're still your family. His mother's comment stung the most. Some people forget who raised them. Kevin had stared at that one for a while. Then deleted it. It wasn't worth answering. She wasn't trying to reconnect. She was trying to reframe the story, to rewrite her absence as his betrayal. He had seen it before. The moment he did something big, something undeniable, suddenly they wanted in, not to understand, not to support, but to take credit, to be included now that it benefited them. But where were they during the years he struggled to pay rent? Where were they when he had to decide between investing in software tools or buying groceries? They weren't curious about his life then. They didn't ask how he was doing. They didn't care. A few days after the party, Ethan showed up at the gate. Kevin saw him through the security camera, his brother in a button-up shirt, tapping the buzzer like he had every right to walk in. Kevin didn't open the gate immediately. He stood in the kitchen, sipping coffee, watching Ethan shift impatiently, his phone in one hand, his other hand on his hip like he was waiting to give a lecture. Kevin had seen that face before. The "I know better than you" face. Eventually, he pressed the button, letting him in. Ethan drove up slowly, visibly impressed despite himself. He stepped out of the car, looked around, and asked, "So, this is real?" Kevin nodded, leaning on the doorframe. "Yeah, it's real." The conversation was civil, but loaded. Ethan tried to mask judgment with concern. "You could have told us," he said. "When's the last time you asked?" Kevin replied, "You always made fun of what I did. You never saw it as serious." Ethan raised his hands. "That's not fair." But it was. It was completely fair. Kevin had been the family's emotional punching bag for over a decade. They just didn't expect him to rise from it stronger. Then Ethan dropped the line that made Kevin pause. "You embarrassed Mom." She cried when she saw the pictures. Kevin almost laughed. "She cried when I dropped out of grad school, too. Said I'd never be anything." Ethan looked away, trying to justify, trying to spin. Kevin let him talk, let him feel uncomfortable. He didn't need to win the argument. He had already won the war. When Ethan finally asked, "So what now? You're cutting us off?" Kevin gave the most honest answer he had in years. "I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm choosing who gets to stay in my world. And respect is the price of admission." Ethan didn't know what to say. That silence, that pause, meant everything. Kevin had broken the script. He was no longer the helper, the joke, or the background player. He had built something real. And now, he was setting the terms. Later that week, a letter arrived, thick envelope, cream-colored paper, his mother's handwriting on 5 full pages. No greeting, just, "I don't even know where to start." The letter wasn't an apology. It was an attempt to reset the narrative. She talked about how families tease out of love, how she was hurt, confused, surprised. Then came the ask. "Maybe we could talk finances? Ashley mentioned your business is doing well." There it was. The motive, not connection, not regret, opportunity. Kevin folded the pages, scanned them into a digital file, and set them aside. That night, he lit a fire in the backyard, poured a drink, and one by one, burned the pages into ash. It wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was release. He wasn't angry. He was clear. He was calm. That weekend, Kevin updated his LinkedIn with new photos from the party and a link to a local magazine's feature story about his journey. The headline read, "From family punchline to founder. How one local underdog built a 7-figure business." The response was overwhelming. Clients reached out. A podcast invited him to speak. Recruiters sent job offers. But the most satisfying message? It wasn't from a stranger. It was from his old college professor, who commented, "You always had it in you, Kevin. Proud to see where you've gone." Kevin smiled, closed his laptop, and walked out to his balcony. The city lights didn't look any different. But he did. He had finally stepped into the life he built, quietly, fiercely, fully. And the best part? He didn't need to prove it to anyone anymore. Kevin's story didn't end with the housewarming party. In many ways, that night was just the beginning. The moment the photos went live, sparkling lights, champagne glasses, smiling guests, and Kevin standing confidently on the balcony, something shifted. The narrative his family had told about him for years started to unravel. He wasn't the joke. He wasn't the underachiever. He wasn't the helper on the sidelines. He was the man at the center of something real. As the image spread through mutual friends and old contacts, Kevin's inbox began to fill. People from college, past clients, even a few former classmates reached out with congratulations. "Proud of you. Man, you really did it." One comment stood out. It came from someone Kevin hadn't seen since high school. "Didn't see any of your family in those party photos." Ouch. The comment was deleted within minutes. But not before it was seen. By Kevin. And more importantly, by his family. The fallout was immediate. His mother left voicemails every morning, each more urgent than the last. Ethan texted him 3 times in a row. "So this is how you treat us? After everything? Guess we know where we stand now." Dorothy posted a vague quote to her Facebook page. Some people forget where they come from. It didn't mention Kevin's name. But everyone knew. He didn't reply. Not to the texts. Not to the posts. Not to the voicemails. This time, the silence was intentional. For years, he had been the one left out of conversations, plans, and decisions. Now, the roles had reversed, and they didn't like it one bit. But Kevin wasn't trying to punish anyone. He was protecting something, his peace. Then, one morning, a delivery driver rang his doorbell. Not a package, a hand-delivered envelope, heavy paper, his mother's handwriting across the front. Inside were 5 handwritten pages on cream stationery. Neat cursive, underlined phrases, no greeting at the top. Just the first sentence. "I don't even know where to start." Kevin sat at his kitchen counter, coffee in hand, and began to read. The letter started with confusion. "We're hurt. We didn't know you were doing so well." Then it shifted to guilt. "You've always been too sensitive, Kevin. Even when you were little, you took everything so personally." By page 2, the tone had hardened. "We've always teased in love. That's just how family keeps each other grounded. But Kevin didn't feel grounded. He had felt buried. Page 3 turned into excuses. Ethan didn't mean what he said. Dorothy always admired your independence. Your dad's not cruel, just old-fashioned. There it was again. Not apologies. Justifications. Rewrites of history meant to soothe their conscience, not heal the wounds. And then came the real reason for the letter, on page 4. We heard from Ashley that your business is doing well. Maybe we can all talk soon. See how we can support one another. Money-wise or otherwise. You've always been good with finances. And some of us could really use a little guidance right now. Kevin stopped reading. He didn't need to read the last page to know how it ended. Something like, "We love you. Let's move forward. Maybe even, don't forget, we're your family." But this letter wasn't about love. It was about power. They had lost control of the version of him they'd built for years. And now they wanted access. Not to reconnect. To reassert their place in his story. He folded the pages slowly. Placed them back in the envelope. And set it aside. That night, Kevin lit a small fire in the backyard. He poured himself a drink. Sat quietly. And one by one, fed each page to the flames. They curled, darkened, and turned to ash, not out of spite, but out of finality. He had spent too long carrying the weight of their words. He wasn't going to carry their expectations anymore. The next morning, his cousin Ashley tagged him in a photo from another family gathering. A dinner at a restaurant. Everyone smiling. The caption read, "Some people forget where they come from. But we still know what real love looks like." The comments were a mix of fake support and pointed jabs. Ethan wrote, "No egos here. Just real connection." His mom added, "Amen to that." Aunt Maria chimed in, "Family first. Always." And then, buried in the thread, a comment from a former classmate. "Didn't Kevin just have a housewarming party last week? Weird. Didn't see any of you there." That comment disappeared quickly too. Kevin said nothing. He didn't repost. He didn't call. He let them play their parts. If they wanted to pretend nothing had changed, let them. But while they were busy performing Unity, Kevin was making moves. A few weeks earlier, a local business magazine had reached out. They were running a feature on rising entrepreneurs in the tech space. At the time, Kevin declined. He didn't want the spotlight. But now, he felt ready. Not to prove anything, but to own his story. The interview was candid. He talked about the challenges of freelance life, the pressure of building something from scratch, and the reality of being underestimated. He never mentioned his family. But their absence lingered in the pauses between his sentences. The article's headline said it all. From failure to founder. How one man quietly built a 7-figure business from his garage. They included a photo of him standing on the balcony of his home. Arms crossed. The city behind him. When the article went live, Kevin shared it to LinkedIn with a simple caption, "Built with patience. Not permission." The reaction was overwhelming. Clients praised him. Recruiters messaged him. Mentors congratulated him. And in the midst of it all, a short email came in. Subject line, "Read the article." The message was from his dad. It read, "House looks nice. Would have been nice if we were included. Let us know when we can visit." Kevin didn't reply. That night, his phone buzzed 3 times. 2 missed calls from his mom. 1 from Dorothy. He ignored them all. The next day, Dorothy texted, "Can we talk? Just us?" That one, Kevin answered. Dorothy sat across from Kevin at a small, quiet coffee shop not far from where they'd grown up. The sun outside filtered through dusty windows, casting long shadows over the worn wooden table between them. She looked older, not just in years, but in expression, more tired, more subdued, but softer, too, less guarded. Kevin watched as she stirred her latte slowly, over and over, as if waiting for courage to rise up from the foam. "I know we were terrible," she said quietly, eyes not quite meeting his. "I won't deny it. We never gave you the respect you deserved." Kevin didn't flinch. He didn't interrupt. He just let her speak. She admitted it. What no one else in the family had dared to say. The jokes, the dismissive glances, the cold shoulders, they weren't harmless. They were armor. Part of it was jealousy. She said, and maybe fear. "You didn't follow the plan. No grad school, no wedding photos, no corporate job. And when it started working out anyway, it made people nervous. Like, if you could make it without the rules. What did that mean for the rest of us who stayed inside the lines?" Kevin gave a small nod. Not angry, just clear. There was a long silence before Dorothy asked, "So that's it? We're just cut off?" Kevin leaned forward slightly, voice calm but steady. "No, but things are different now." He wasn't cruel, he wasn't vengeful, but he had boundaries now, drawn with intention and conviction. "You don't speak for me," he said. "You don't show up unless you're invited. And if you want to be part of my life, you do it with respect. No more jokes at my expense. No more guilt disguised as love. No more asking for help dressed up as family bonding." Dorothy nodded slowly, tears forming but not falling. "Can I try to do better?" she asked. Kevin replied, "Yes, but what he meant was, we'll see." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a beginning. 2 weeks later, Kevin got another message, this time from his dad. A dinner invitation, just the 5 of them at a familiar restaurant. Kevin declined, calmly but firmly. "Too busy with work," he said, and it was true. He'd just accepted a speaking engagement at a tech event in Seattle. His schedule was packed. The next day, Ethan left a voicemail. "So you think you're better than us now? Just because you got lucky?" His voice was sharp, bitter. "You're still that same weird kid." "Kevin, money doesn't buy respect. It just buys fences." Kevin listened to the message once and deleted it. That weekend, he hosted another gathering, this one smaller, more intimate, a quiet dinner with close friends, a few old mentors, and one special guest, Dorothy. She arrived with a bottle of wine and a nervous smile. Kevin greeted her warmly, walked her through the house, and watched her eyes widen with each room. "You really did all this?" she whispered. "You actually made it happen." Kevin smiled. "Yeah, I did." For the first time, there was no sarcasm, no punchline waiting to drop, just awe. During dinner, Dorothy took a long look at his office, the whiteboard covered in plans, the framed article on the wall, the awards from clients. Later, while helping with dishes, she said, "I think this is the first time I've ever seen you as the main character." Kevin let out a soft laugh. "That's because this is the first time I stopped waiting for permission." And she nodded. When Dorothy left that evening, she gave him a hug, not the stiff, obligatory kind from family reunions past, but one that actually meant something. It didn't fix everything, but it didn't have to. Kevin didn't feel drained. He felt free. That night, as he sat by the window with a glass of wine, he checked his inbox. 3 new emails from his mom, 1 from his dad. He didn't open any of them, but there was one more message, one that made him pause. A podcast invitation. The subject line read, "The power of being underestimated." The host wanted Kevin to come on and talk about his journey, how he went from overlooked to respected, from underestimated to unstoppable. Kevin said yes. When the episode aired, it spread quickly across LinkedIn, YouTube, and Spotify. Kevin spoke honestly about being the one people laughed at, the one who didn't follow the plan, the one who had to build confidence brick by brick. He didn't name names, he didn't call out his family. But the truth was woven between the lines, embedded in the pauses, the tone, the stories he chose to tell. At the very end of the episode, the host asked if Kevin had one message for listeners, something he wished he'd known 10 years earlier. Kevin thought for a moment. Then he said, "Sometimes the strongest revenge is in proving people wrong. But even better than that, it's creating a life so full and so complete that their opinions no longer matter. Not because you erased them, but because you moved beyond them." He paused, then added quietly, "And when you finally stop asking for a seat at someone else's table, you build your own." That clip went viral. The response was overwhelming. People shared it, quoted it, some even wrote to Kevin, thanking him for saying the words they wished they'd had the strength to speak. And his family? They heard it too. His dad sent another short message. "Let us know when we can come by." Kevin didn't reply. Instead, he got to work. He signed a new consulting deal, helped a small business double their revenue, mentored a college student through launching her first app. Kevin was still the same in many ways, thoughtful, quiet, a little awkward, but he wasn't soft anymore. He didn't need his family's permission to breathe. He didn't need their jokes to feel included. He didn't need their pride to feel worthy. He had built something real, something lasting, and for the first time in his life, Kevin knew he wasn't something to be ashamed of. He was something to be proud of.